Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Molly.
Thanks for joining me on my favourite books this week.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
First author I'm chatting with, so I feel slightly intimidated.
I don't know. I think perhaps it should be the other way around. But yes, first book just published.
Wow!
So
Congratulations.
Exciting. Thank you.
Where do you live? Where are you right now?
I am in Newton Abbot in Devon, so in between, near enough to Torquay. So not far from there at all, just a couple of miles. So we're in the beautiful English Riviera here. And it's been a lovely day as well. So we're very lucky.
Great for story inspiration, I'm sure.
Absolutely is. Yes, it is.
And I know that one of your books you were chatting about is the book you've written. I don't know whether you're starting with that one, but I'm really excited to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'll show you. I have it here. So it's Barley the Bear Stories, and it's a collection of 7 short rhyming stories, all about a little American black bear cub called Barley and his best friend Jack, who just happens to be a Jack Russell, based on my own dog. And it's set in Alaska, or just off the coast of Alaska, on a little island, a fictional island called Paulet Island, which means River of Bears. So it's all about their adventures that they have. Nice short little stories, so they're great for bedtime reading. And of course, children, I think, respond very well to rhyme, and it's very easy for them to remember the rhyming patterns. And with each story, I invite the reader to come back with me to Paulet Island. And then I finish every story with, well, we're going to leave our friends there until next time. So it's a continuous sort of journey to and from the island. And just to sort of draw the reader and, the little one in. So, because it's great for parents, grandparents, family members to read to a younger child, or of course a slightly older child would be happy to read it by themselves. So.
And why Alaska? Have you been there before?
No, I absolutely love it. I mean, I watch everything on television to do with Alaska. I have, National Geographic books. It's been a place I think that's always fascinated me. So whether I've got any family connections, that way at all, going way back, I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out. But it's just one of those places that I think is still so unexplored, still so wild and beautiful. Such a lovely variety of animals as well. Very magical place. So I thought that was a good place to base my stories.
Oh, well, I think you have every reason to go and pay it a visit one day.
Absolutely. That's the aim anyway. That's definitely the aim.
Well, that looks like such and why a bear?
Again, I've always loved bears. So as a child, I wasn't particularly dolly minded. It was always bears, teddy bears. And then, as you grow up, it's looking at the wildlife, etc. But I think the bears themselves are so clever, so majestic, very misunderstood. In fact, I'm a big follower of one of the bear rehabilitation centres out in Canada, and the work that they do with trying to educate the public about, especially obviously living, when they're living abroad in the USA, etc., what to do if they come across a bear, educating people about, hunting. There's such a lot of work still needed to do, because these animals will end up endangered completely, if they're hunted mercilessly, and people just don't know how to live with them. I think one of the problems at the moment with America is that these black bears especially, they will encroach into human territory. So they're great scavengers. So, they will rifle through people's dustbins and things, or get into a locked car. And of course, everyone thinks it's funny, when you see the videos online of a bear walking along on his back legs, etc., not frightened of anything. But of course, then the bears end up getting shot. and euthanized because they're a danger then to human beings. But, you know, I think there's a lot that we can learn about, you know, the management of the situation. Obviously, we don't have them in the UK, so we're okay. But yeah, I think it's a very much a passionate cause of mine, and they're such beautiful, beautiful animals.
Is it a brown bear that you write about? I mean, is it a particular sort of breed of bear that you focus on?
Yeah, it's an American black bear.
Ah.
So it's not a grizzly. So the grizzlies are the brown bears, and they're massive. The black bears are sort of the next one down, and you can generally find them in sort of most of America, Canada, Alaska, and then as we move across to Asia, then you have a slightly different version of the black bear. And there are also bears called sun bears, moon bears. So there's quite a few different breeds or variations of the breed, if you like, but ours is an American black bear.
And are they quite endangered? Or
I wouldn't say endangered, but I think if the hunting and trapping isn't got under control, eventually, like all wild animals, you know, we will see them be endangered. So again, the education and the rehabilitation of some of the cubs, because the organisation that I follow, they work very, very hard with rescuing cubs that have been either orphaned or the mother's been shot or for any number of reasons. You know, they'll go along and they'll rescue the cub, rear them up to become, you know, healthy wild animals that can be released back into the wild. And I think that's important, rather than keeping them in a sanctuary or just in a sanctuary for however long. You know, they are thinking, right, we want to breed this, you know, bring this animal up properly, get it back into its natural environment. So that's really important.
Yeah, at least bears aren't used in circuses and that kind of thing anymore, because I think that must have been.
I think there's one or two places, maybe. Russia, I think there might still be a little bit of a problem with that, and also people keeping bears sometimes as pets, believe it or not, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So, and I think even in our country, even with the exotic and the wild animal licenses, that the keeping of wild animals, I believe, was made illegal some time ago. I believe there are still things like lynx, bear, amongst other animals that shouldn't be in our country that are being kept sort of illegally and on the quiet.
Gosh. So a lot of work still to do.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And how can people get your book? How can I get your book?
Right. Well, Barley is available through Amazon and Waterstones, WH Smith, Barnes and Noble, and the publisher themselves, Pegasus Publishers. But any good bookstore should be able to order it in. You know, if somebody went along and said, do you stock it? If they haven't got it in stock, they should be able to order it in. And it retails at $6.99.
Wow. Okay. Well, after chatting to you, it will be the first thing I do is order your story. I promise. Well, I've got a book too. My first one is I have done this a few times before, but it's called Ship's Cats, and it's a series of little stories about how cats have been involved in ships, and I found this story because it's really funny. It's called The Cat That Caught a Seagull, and my first story about Oscar the ferry cat has a seagull that gives the cat a ride, and this is about a cat called Rattus who was on HMS Galston and was just on the very top of the deck, and a seagull came and landed quite close to the cat, and the cat got a bit cross and sank his teeth into the seagull's leg. And then as the seagull took off, this cat, Rattus, kept hanging on, and so he was sort of flying higher and higher, clinging on to this seagull. And then eventually he lets go and sinks into the sea and swims up. But I thought that was quite funny. And during the Second World War, so it must have been a nice sort of distraction for all the naval men from their work. And it's just funny because it's very similar to the image in one of my stories too. And you don't hear about cats flying in the sky with seagulls.
Not very often.
But maybe it happens more than we think. I'm not sure. What's your next book?
My next book is The Other Boleyn Girl by Phillipa Gregory.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Most people might know that from the film starring Scarlett Johansson. And I think it was Natalie Portman was in it. Fantastic book. It goes, as most books do, if they've had a film made about them, it goes into a lot more detail. I love the Tudor period of history. Absolutely fascinating. And certainly when my hubby and I get a chance to go out and about Tudor houses, one of the lovely things that I like to go and see. But it's a fantastic book. It's so well written, totally immersive. So once you get it, you start and you open the book up. Once you've started, you don't want to put it down. And in fact, we got to the end and I was like, oh, and we all know how it ended for poor Anne Boleyn. But it's mostly about her sister, Mary, who had an affair with Henry VIII, and the possibility that she probably had a couple of children by him.
Yeah, and it's all about... many people know about that, do they? That Mary was involved too. Well, I certainly didn't.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that was the good thing about the film, is that it really brought it out into sort of the public consciousness. Because no, it's not widely known, and certainly it was a new thing for me. And I saw the film before I read the book. But it's absolutely fascinating, and it's all about, the relationship between Mary and her sister and their brother George, who of course was accused, along with a few other men, of having, an incestuous relationship with his sister Anne. And it tells it more from Mary's perspective. Anne doesn't come across in it terribly well, but I think that it does give you an insight into Tudor life and the court life especially, and how treacherous that would have been, full of skullduggery and intrigue and courtly liaisons, shall we say. But it's a fantastic book, really, really good. And I've read it time after time.
Do you find that you kind of quite like Mary's quite a likable character generally, isn't she? Does she come across that during the book?
Yeah, better in the book than the actual audio book. I didn't enjoy as much as actually physically reading. And I guess that's because we can put our own spin on things. We use our own imagination. So, of course, Mary, then the character can become whatever we want her to be, as opposed to listening to somebody, reading her dialogue, etc. Personally, I like Anne. I think a good, strong woman. She knew what she wanted. Okay, it didn't end well for her, but some of the articles and things that I've read over the last few years certainly show that maybe she was innocent and it was all a setup just so that Henry could move on to the next wife to try and get a male heir, which is obviously one of the things.
But yeah, because Anne did have a lot of miscarriages, didn't she?
Yeah, and of course his first wife, Catherine, who again, another very, very strong woman, fantastic character she is. So again, I think a lot of the wives were quite misunderstood. Really, really interesting. Phillipa Gregory, very descriptive in her writing. In fact, all of her books, wonderful. So heartily recommend that one.
And at the end, Mary, well, without wanting to give it away, Mary kind of takes her back. She escapes the court or goes off for a sort of peaceful life with a man who her family deem far below her.
Absolutely.
But makes a sort of good go of it, and actually was probably quite relieved to be away with everything that happened with her sister.
I think she had been sent away, I think, to Hever, which again is one of my favourite places ever, Hever Castle.
Oh, I've never been.
Absolutely beautiful. And when she was there, she actually got out onto her family's land quite a lot and met their tenants, and she was very interested, again, very, very forward-thinking girl. She was very interested in the growing of crops, and bettering the lives of her tenants, etc. So that was one of the things that she did want to do, was actually physically go back to the countryside, and leave all the courtly shenanigans behind her. So it's a very good book.
And Phillipa Gregory writes a lot of books of sort of Tudor period, doesn't she? She's quite prolific.
Yeah, an awful lot. In fact,
have you read other ones?
I have got, what's the one I've got over there at the moment, which is going to be my next one? The Boleyn Inheritance is going to be one of my next ones. And I think that's more about Anne Boleyn and Mary Boleyn's mother. So, because she was obviously a Howard originally, which again was a very powerful Tudor family, very high up in court life. So again, that's my next one to read.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I'll definitely, I have read that, but not for quite a long time, so I'll try and look up the other Boleyn girl as well. My next book is a book called Bookworm.
Yeah.
It's written by a lady called Lucy Mangan, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who writes for The Guardian and The Telegraph, and has apparently 10,000 books at her home, which I'm not quite sure. But it's she sort of charts her life in terms of the books that have influenced it. And so she sort of starts with the sort of simple spot and picture books, and then goes right up to I'm trying to think, up to all the sort of quite racy young adult books, like all the Judy Blume ones. And so it's just really nice. It's because it's sort of a narrative, so yeah, it's readable. It's not just like it's one book, then one book, then one book, but it talks a little bit about the story. So I've got one here that she truly falls in love with reading. She says, through The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever read that book when you were young.
No.
It's about this sort of owl called Plop, who's really afraid of the dark. And then he discovers, because there's a little boy who is waiting for fireworks, so he's really excited about the dark, and another man who's an astrologer, so he's really excited about the dark. And it's sort of teaching, and so Plop realizes that actually the dark can be quite exciting and open up lots of potential.
Oh, that's nice.
And so, but the only thing I have with this story is the book is she mentions the books, but if you want to know what they're actually about, you then need to look them up, because she mentions them in terms of how they influence her life rather than the actual sort of plot of the books. So because this one, she talks about how it sort of got her reading, and she used to read it every night at home. And but it highlights how important it is to read and what we can get from them. So she goes on through Millie Molly Mandy, then chapter on Roald Dahl, and at the very end she has a record of all the different books that she reads. So that's good. So you can look, and then if you're interested by any of them, you can then sort of look them up further and
that's a good idea.
And it's just a really nice, it's a sort of nice, easy read, and it introduces you to there were loads of titles of books that I hadn't heard before, and that if I wanted to, and I have looked up quite a few of them actually, and there are lots more for me to it's a sort of book you can dip into again and again really as well, because there's always something else you can get out of it.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's something you can pick up and put down whatever you fancy.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know that if you go to the beginning, it will be sort of young books, and if you go to the end, it'll be young adults. So it's kind of like in a good structure too.
Yeah. So how many years does she cover with the books?
Right up to sort of 18. She goes, and then she even talks about when you're a parent. So she kind of almost goes full circle, because she finishes her childhood and then talks about how now she's a parent, the way that she uses the books again. But it doesn't go into, it only deals with sort of children's books pretty much. It doesn't go into, it goes into, her final chapter is called Coming of Age. So that's sort of the G.D. Blooms and the sort of and 18, 19-year-old books. Young adult.
Yeah.
But no Phillipa Gregory.
No Phillipa Gregory.
Quite make it in. But I think your next author does make it in quite a big way.
Oh, God. Well, what can I say? The amazing Enid Blyton. Who of us of a certain age doesn't love Enid Blyton? This is The Magic Faraway Tree. And I think this book alone probably shaped my childhood, and gave me a love of magic and nature, fairies, adventure. Everything was in this one little book. An incredible author. I don't think she's ever, if you say Enid Blyton, sometimes, you know, you can get the sort of the highbrow people that will say, oh God, you know, Enid Blyton. But she was a very prolific author. I mean, my goodness, the body of work that, you know, she has was incredible. And something really, again, for everybody. You know, for older children, there were the famous 5, the Secret 7, Mallory Towers, about the boarding school, and all the antics of the boarders there. But with the Magic Faraway Tree and the Enchanted Wood series, just a wonderful magical place. And I think that's what I tried to do with Barley, because although Barley is an American black bear cub, as we've said, and he's in a very natural environment, he gets up to all manner of amazing adventures. So, you know, I've tried to keep everything as real as possible, but this bear does incredible things. And it's the same sort of thing with the Magic Faraway Tree. So set in the middle of this amazing forest in England, and 4 children go off into the forest. They discover the Magic Faraway Tree, and they discover all the wonderful magical folk that actually live in the tree itself. And then various lands arrive at the top of the tree. So the children then go up and they have adventures in things like Topsy-Turvy Land, or the land of Do What You Please. And it transports you. I think that was the beauty of Enid Blyton. She could literally transport you away to another land, you know, filled with magic and wonderment. And again, I never wanted to leave, I have to say. So she is my favourite author ever. And I still have a few of these and my particular books left from my childhood. The Magic Wishing Chair was another one of hers, which I particularly loved as a young child. So she was my inspiration. So hopefully when, you know, everyone's reading my book, they get a sense of, we are being taken to this lovely magical place where, you know, the animals are talking, they're getting up to all sorts of crazy things, but it's still set in a real environment. So it's, yeah. So Enid Blyton, love her.
Do you have a favourite land in terms of the lands?
Oh, I think, let me remind myself, but I think it was the Land of Presents was good.
Oh yeah, that was
and also the Land of Do As You Please. Because although, you know, the lands sound very enticing, sometimes they can have a very good lesson. And again, this is what I've done with my book. So for an example, you know, the Land of Do As You Please or Have What You Want, the children there might get a bit too greedy or a bit precocious. And then, of course, they get themselves into trouble. And then they have to get themselves out of trouble with the help of their friends. So it was quite good from a moral perspective, really. It's like, you know, don't take advantage. If you've got something nice happen to you, you know, accept it for what it is, but don't be greedy. Don't push for more and more and more. So again, there's some good lessons in there as well.
There's a Land of, I'm afraid I haven't actually read the book. It's the one Enid Blyton I haven't read, but I was looking it up and read that there was a land called Dame Slap that was a really nasty one, and that there are a few it's not all lovely lands. There are a few
No,
horrible ones too.
Absolutely there are, yeah. See if I can find one here. I think The Land of the Old Woman, that was another one where they got themselves into trouble. It was the old woman that lived in a shoe. And of course, they got caught up with all her children. And she wasn't a particularly nice character. And so the four children in the book, they have to try and get away from the old woman who lived in the shoe. And I think she went as far as chasing them right to the top of the faraway tree. And they had to try and escape all her dirty washing water to try and get out of her clutches. Otherwise, they would have ended up with all the children. So, yeah, so it's not all pleasurable.
Wow, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Absolutely, yes, indeed.
Well, I knew you because I knew that was you had an Enid Blyton book. I picked my final one is her biography.
Oh, wow, okay.
That because I was looking her up for my dissertation because I was at one stage going to do her, so I researched her a bit at that time. And this is the best. There are quite a lot of biographies about her, but this one by Barbara Stoney is the best one, I think, personally, that there is out there. And it kind of it makes you realize, like you said, that it's sort of escapism to another land. And generally, there's a reason for wanting that escapism. And so you sort of learn about how tough her childhood was and that her father left and what a influence that had on her the rest of her life, and sort of made her sort of try to always be recapturing that sort of childhood moments because she'd lost them. And her mum was nice, but her father was sort of more on her wavelength, I think, than her mother was much more practical. And she liked sort of looking at trees and roots and making up games and things. And her mum didn't do that so much with her. So her childhood sort of stopped. And so then she's always looking for the things dear to the heart of childhood. And she goes on and she does get married, but it's not that happy. And then she finds another man and is nice to him. And she has her two lovely girls, but she's not that sort of warm to them, which is surprising because you'd have thought being an author and being a children's author, you'd sort of, I mean, your own children would take precedence, but she's so busy sort of promoting herself, I think, that she doesn't find she really has time for her family.
Yeah, I was quite surprised when I had read an article in a magazine or a newspaper about that she wasn't overly maternal. So, of course, the picture that she paints in her books, and then reality for her own children. I think it was quite a strained sort of relationship, even in adulthood, I think, as the children grew up.
And with the rest of her own family, she kind of sort of estranged herself from them as well. So I guess it must have been sort of a bit lonely for her, which is maybe why she just hides herself in her stories instead. So it's sort of, and it talks a lot about that and about how when she's quite old, she starts getting dementia and losing her mind, and the sort of how awful that must be, particularly for an author where sort of words in your mind are everything. So it's sort of and there are quite a lot of nice, I'll try and show you some. These are some pictures of her as a little girl. She does become a teacher for a bit before she starts writing, and it sort of shows she lives in a lovely house, and she's sort of terribly sort of successful, I guess, if that's how you judge success. And so it's sort of, and then it shows her houses and her various places she lives.
I think the house had a lovely name as well.
The Old Thatch. And then I think, and then she moves, Green Hedges, I think, is one of her houses.
Yeah, it might have been that one, but I know there was one house in particular where it was quite a lovely sort of romantic. It's the sort of the house name that you would imagine that an author would have. So
yeah, well, Green Hedges is one she lives in with Kenneth. That's her second husband That's her
Yeah.
there with him, I think. And the Old Thatch is the first one, I think.
And what price does that book retail at, Molly?
$9.99.
Oh, so that's good. That's nice and affordable.
And it's quite easy reading. And then obviously it goes through all her different books and the different successes she had with those here too.
Yeah.
So it's really good. I mean, it's again the sort of book you can read a few times, but it's not too dense, and so you can sort of, it's pretty easy reading, to be honest.
Yeah,
and
no, that's good. I think that'll be one for the Christmas list.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They do have a film, actually. There's a film about Enid Blyton too, called Becoming Enid, I think.
Oh, okay.
That's with Helena Bonham Carter is Enid Blyton. It's quite depressing. But so I think I'd recommend reading the book, I think, over the film, because it gives a more thorough sort of overview of her life, whereas the film is very much just one point of view, whereas that's sort of getting all the facts and letting you make up your mind.
Yeah, which is important, I think.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I think that's all your books.
It is, darling, yes.
Well, that's gone far too quickly. But before we finish, I've got one literary fact. Do you know what Enid Blyton's pseudonym that she wrote under sometimes was? I didn't know she had a pseudonym. It was Mary Pollock.
Oh, not as nice as Enid Blyton.
No. But she used that apparently sometimes. And what fictional character would you be if you could be any?
Oh, wow. Now, this was a tough one. There were two. And one is Hermione Granger from the Harry Potter books. I think fabulous role model for girls especially. You know, strong, brave, loyal, clever. You know, she's not particularly the most beautiful, you know, girl in the school, etc. But she's got something so enchanting about her, and she's fearless. And I love that. The other character that I actually have the nickname of is Fairy Godmother. So a lot of my friends know me as FGM. And again, I think the whole idea of making people's dreams and wishes come true, helping other people is one of my things I love to do. Plus you get to wear a fabulous frock and you have a wand. So that's another reason. What about you?
Well, it kind of changes each day. I always rather go for one of the Little Women characters. And today I think I'd like to be Beth from Little Women, because she's a sweet little girl.
So yours changes daily.
Well, it depends. It depends how I'm feeling that day as to who I want to be. It doesn't change every day. I mean, some days sometimes I stick with the same person for a while.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so fun talking to you.
Yeah, it's been lovely, Molly. You can ask me back anytime.
Oh, watch out. You might regret that.
No, that's fine. Ask away.
And I'm going to order your book right away.
Wonderful. I would like to know what you think. So hopefully you'll like it.
Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.